Welcome to another week of The Inimitable Black Woman. I am your host, Donna, and if it's your first time here, I am so happy you're here. I want you to close your eyes and imagine a firm embrace. That's me embracing you. I'm the firm embrace. I'm hugging you. Isn't that beautiful? Isn't that beautiful? Well, this week, we're going to just jump right into it. I'm not going to hold you off on this interview, but we are coming from Paris with this interview, so I'm so excited. Let's take a listen. What is your name?
Quieesha Burns, but everyone calls me Corii, Corii. So,
okay, where are you from?
I'm from a small town. Well, it's not really small, but for other people compared to New York City and Paris, it's small. Syracuse, New York.
Okay. So currently you're in Paris, right?
Yes.
Okay, so when did you move there and why did you move there? And how long you been there? What's the details? What's the story? What's the Corii in Paris story?
So I came to Paris in 2019 for my master's degree in contemporary fashion design, and I'm studying at IFA Paris. So halfway through the degree, it got cut because of COVID. Yeah. So I ended up going back to New York, and now I'm back in Paris. And I've done internships here, and I've been working a little bit. But in a few months, I'm actually going to leave Paris and go to Italy. So Paris for now.
What's it like being a Black woman in Paris?
Whew, it's different than, of course, the US. I feel like Black women here don't, in my opinion, just from observation from I've been here 2 years. So I feel like the voice is they're not as outspoken as women in the US. I feel like women in the US, Black women I know, when something is wrong or off, they usually speak out about it and they're not very timid about it. They voice their opinions. But here I feel like it's more timid and they speak amongst themselves, but not a lot of action or this needs to change mindset. My opinion, I know I have some French Black friends and they're gonna be like, no, she didn't. But
I mean, it's just honestly, it's just your opinion from your point of view. I think that's something respectable. I don't know. I feel like I feel like there's sometimes with us where it's like, I don't know. It just feels like we're speaking for like every one of us, right? Like if someone could say, oh, all of us and all that. And I think because of the fact that there isn't so many like outlets for us to highlight all of our different voices and opinions, it can sometimes feel like whenever you're speaking out, that it's like you're speaking out for the group. But it should be known, if people don't know listening to this, and from how I do the podcast, every Black woman is different. So what you're saying right now is from your experience and from your point of view. That doesn't mean that people don't have other experiences, but I'm talking to you and I want to know your experience, and that is good enough. So
awesome. Well, that's my perspective on the situation, and it's kind of heart-wrenching to see, and it's a huge shock for me coming from the US and being around such strong Black women, my mother, my grandmother, and how outspoken they are for change and to make things move, like to move the needle for Black women. And to come here and it's just like a little plateau and I was shocked at that. But yeah.
How have you adjusted to that environment?
Honestly, the network of Black women that I communicate with in Paris, I try to encourage them in any way possible because I feel like there's a sense of encouragement needed. And I feel like it starts there with someone telling you like there's better, or you can come together in that sense. So I try to reach out in that way as much as I can and to just network with them and to see their views on American Black women, because although I have mine on them, when I speak to them, the way they see American Black women, oh my gosh, they watch too many shows, okay? And the way they paint the Black woman from the US to people in Europe is insane. I had one person tell me, a Black French male, tell me that Black women, he heard that Black women are a little crazy. If you do something wrong in a relationship, I was just like, wow, we were at lunch with everyone and he said this. I'm just like, wow, no.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah.
Why do you think culturally that's what it's like there tonally?
I don't want to say suppression, but I feel like, yes, the French are very like outspoken, but I still feel like there's that disconnect from the French people and then the French Black people. Just like in the US, you have like Americans and then you have Black Americans. And what's happening on the American level and then what's happening on the Black American level is different. So I feel like it's the same here in a sense. So yeah, I would just say I think that's why there's such a disconnect and like I don't want to say progression, but sounds so bad. But yeah, that's what I would say, honestly.
But what is something that you feel culturally there that you're experiencing as a Black woman that you do wish was here in the United States?
Hmm.
And if you
I
don't
would
have one,
say
that's okay too sometimes.
I do have one. I would say in the fashion, I do. In the fashion realm, for me in New York City, I find it very hard to break down some doors. That glass ceiling doors or glass ceilings are still there. But here in Paris, I feel like there was an equal opportunity. Like when going for internships in New York, I feel like there aren't equal opportunities for designers based off race and being Black. But when I come here in Paris, it's everything is equal when you walk in. It's your skill. It's what you've learned. And that's with working with French designers and American designers turned French. Like I worked with Rick Owens, and I felt like the playing level was the same for everyone they brought in. So like once I'm in the organization and I'm working, like backstage or at a show, it's every intern or part-time person is treated the same. So like you're not giving certain tasks to put you out of view, which I feel like some places in New York City, they do that during shows. But I feel like here it was everybody is the same in terms of once you're in the door, you can work even in the interview process and getting in. So that's what I would say. I wish New York would be more susceptible to.
What brought you to fashion? Like what's your story? Like what brought you to this point? Like what even sparked the interest in you?
So I would have to say when I was in not I know a lot of people say, oh, when I was young, when I was 5 years old, I liked glitter. I didn't really make that connection. Yes, I was putting things together, but I didn't make that connection until now that I loved it that early. So I would go back to my most fond memory of me being in Henniger High School in Syracuse, New York, small little school, and my teacher seeing that I'm making dresses out of clay and out of wire, and everyone else is making like pottery, and I'm making dresses out of clay, like full dresses. And she's like, have you ever tried to make that in fabric? I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't do that. So it stuck with me. And when I went to my first university, I just did business management the safe way, but then I added the dual major of fashion because that memory kept coming back to me. And yes, I'm good at business management, business administration, but I did have that urge, like seeing people in the school doing fashion, like I can do that. I can do that and I can do it better. So why can't I do it? So I would say from high school, that's where it stemmed from. And then it grew and came back into my memory from there.
What is it about fashion that you feel connects with you so deeply?
I feel like the shape and the forms and like feeling comfortable in your own skin and in your own clothing and having that confidence. I came from a very poor family, so I had to make things to like for prom, for events, for myself. So I feel like by me doing that, I built my own confidence, like having something that I like rather than getting something that I don't like, but I can afford at that time. So I would make something that was extravagant and it would really boost my confidence. And I feel like that's where a lot of my inspiration stems from as well, like building the confidence of the people that wear my clothing as well. So that's important to me.
You mentioned your childhood briefly. What was your childhood like in Syracuse?
So I grew up in Syracuse, New York, and in the 90s, there was a lot of redlining throughout Syracuse, New York. And looking back at it now, I can see it more clearly and a lot of the restrictions from the small town. But it was pretty hard. I had four sisters, two brothers, and one mother working. So you can imagine things were tight, things were difficult. Um, I grew up seeing her be very creative, whether it be with food and making things last, or creating things and making new dishes, or creating bed linens and doing things like that. So I feel like that kind of pushed me to be more artistic and creative as well. But yeah,
So, do you get along with all your siblings? Were you guys like the Brady Bunch, but you were all related to each other?
of course not. I think you know that's not true. But
I mean, some people, it surprised me. I know people with big families. I'm like, all of y'all get along? I was like, it's me and my brother. And there was definitely like a 10-year span of just like, I hate you. Where did you come from?
like that with everyone, and siblings that say, "Oh, that's not true, we get along," they're lying. They're definitely lying because it's a lie. It's all a lie. But like with all siblings, there's tension and a lot of tension because again, we had two or maybe three bedrooms, but then all these children. So of course we had to share a lot. So there's going to be tension amongst us, and but I feel like now that we're all grown, it's like now we're all cool. But when we were kids, of course not. Of course, you put seven kids in a small space and you think they're gonna be buddy buddy? No, no.
What would you say? What was like the biggest drama that happened when you were a kid with your siblings? Like, what was the thing that you guys would argue about all the time?
Oh my gosh, I would say who ate someone's food in the refrigerator. Because, like, for example, you come home from a party, you have extra cake or whatever that you're planning to eat tomorrow after dinner, and you'll put it in the refrigerator behind the milk so no one can find it. And then you'll come to get it after dinner the next day, and it'll just be the plate there. They will leave the plate
That's
there.
savage. That's really savage.
And then no one knows who ate the cake. No one knows. And this would just be a continuous thing because that's what siblings do. They eat and run.
Did you ever figure out the truth? Would it always come out who did it? Or are there like plates that you still don't know who ate?
There are places that I still to this day, I have suspicion of who did it, but still no confession. Still no confession. Over 10 years later and no confession. But most of the time, we would figure it out because you would be able to tell people's tell. Like they'll get a little angry or they'll leave the room so they won't laugh or giggle like it's funny. But there are some plates that I still to this day, they will not tell me if they ate it.
What were you like at 13?
Oh my gosh, 13. I would say 13 is when I became really outspoken in like a way that I couldn't control yet because I was very timid prior, very quiet, very that girl in the back of the class. But at 13, I'm like, I'm 13, I'm not taking anything from the world.
Was there a moment in your life where you realized, like, I am a Black woman, I am different in that way?
I would say even coming from a town where there was a lot of redlining, my mother and my grandmother, like being Black was never made to be a problem, or it was celebrated, yes, but it wasn't frowned upon. So I didn't experience that until I went to college, where I started to see like the clique thing and things weren't really together in terms of like one dorm would be a lot of mainly white people in it, and then another dorm it would just be all Black people. And I'm just like, it's weird for me because I went to a public school, so everything was mixed in New York, melting pot, everything is mixed. So when I went to a different part of upstate where it was mainly a lot of white people, I noticed how still, I don't want to say segregation because you had an option, but it was very hard to get into this dormitory. So no, you know what? Segregation. So I would say there was a separation of races in terms what dorm you stayed in, what sports you played, and you were allowed to play. Like, for example, I wanted to play it's with horses. I can't even remember what it's called, but it's like horseback riding or whatever. So I wanted to do that, but I felt like there were so many obstacles put in my way. And I do feel like it was because I was Black, because certain things were being offered to other races that applied. So I would say when I went to college, that's when I first realized, yeah. But I was new.
What is something that you have learned about yourself in the last 365 days?
That is a great question. I've learned, I would say, due to everything that's going on, me moving around a lot, traveling from the States and back to Europe, I would say patience with everything that's going on with COVID, and just really taking a moment to just rest at sometimes, because I'm usually go, go, go. So I would say patience with myself on all levels, I would say.
Is that something that you never really given to yourself?
Nope, not at all. I don't think so. I think I'm like a workaholic. I've been working since I was 11 years old. So under the table. So I would say I've never really had the moment to just take a moment and have patience with myself and more acceptance. So I would say this year really gave me a moment to take a deep breath and to really dig into that.
What was your first job at 11?
Can I say that? Can I say? So at 11, I started working a newspaper route. You're supposed to be 16, but I worked for someone that was working for a newspaper route. And that was officially my first job. And I worked up until 16. And then I kept working, and I started my fast food job at 16, then my clothing store job. So I've been working literally every day since I was 11 years old.
I do want to ask this question now. What is the best advice you've ever received?
That's so hard, because I've received advice from from my grandmother. I've received advice about my name from Kelly Rowland.
Baby, I'ma be a motivation.
So
Wait, pause. Wait, what?
I've received, I think Kelly Rowland. She gave me advice. This is my top one, but it's up there. I was working in New York City, and she came in. She was buying things, styling. She was performing, and I introduced myself to her. Well, my boss introduced me to her, and she introduced me as Q. She's a white woman. She introduced me as Q. She calls me Q because she cannot pronounce my name. Yeah. So Kelly really chopped her in half about that. She was just like, well, is your name Q, or does she just call you that? What's your full name? So then I said my full name, Quieesha, and she was like, would you like to be called Quieesha? Because it's not that hard to say. And I was just like, oh yeah. I was like, Q is okay. Just to crack the tension in the room. But yeah, so that advice stuck with me, because throughout my middle school and college life, a lot of professors and people that weren't Black always wanted to call me Q, or by my last name, which is Burns. So being in sports, I went with Burns a lot because it was on the back of my jersey. But I started to really think about it after she said that. And I'm like, why am I allowing her to call me Q? Because is it easier for her, or do I actually like the name? So I had to sit with myself. And then, she was calling me Quieesha after that, because the word got around. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, Quieesha is better. And I broke it down in syllables for her. Quieesha is not that hard, So I would say that that was a good advice.
That's so funny. It's funny because it's so deep, really, right? It's a part of identity. It's part of who you are. And Yeah. So how did you feel about your name? Like before that moment, during that time, like have you ever felt something about like your name?
I love my name. Um, it always baffled me why it was so hard to say, because in English class or when we go to school, we're taught in syllables. So if I break my name down for you in syllables, and it's Quieesha, 3 syllables, you're telling me as a professional you cannot say 4 syllables, honey. Yeah. So for me, I love my name. Um, I do go by Corey because that was a childhood name, just from my aunt. So it's either Quieisha or Corey. I no longer go by Q. I don't like being called Q anymore. So yeah, after sitting with myself and thinking about it and really like laying out why, that's what I determined. So
When it comes to what your looks look like, what has been your influence and how would you describe the look of your garments?
my looks now really dig into my early childhood, um, and in middle school, like I was saying before, with 3D and wire and sculpture. So I bring in sculpture, but I also bring in something now that matters to me, which is social economics. So for this collection, I did like a brainstorm of social economics and 3D art, and I came to mental health. So my collection now will be on mental health. So I would say it's very sculptural, very deconstructed, sustainable
That's really
in a
dope.
nutshell.
So when is it currently launched? Like how can people follow up and see your work and things of that nature?
So the collection is in process now. So anyone interested could follow on Instagram at bodybycorey.com or at bodybycorey on Instagram. And there I'm showing the process of making it in Paris as well as having it manufactured in Italy. And it will launch in the fall.
One thing you mentioned about this new line was mental health. Why is mental health at the forefront of your vision?
Mental health is so important, especially at like in today's age with COVID going on and within our community, the Black community. I feel like mental health is always put to the side or not spoken about in the way that it should. And I feel like now is a great time more than ever to speak about it and to get people not afraid to talk about it and to seek help. So I would say that. And also with the current situation with the courts and how they treat, it's a whole brainstorm, but how they treat Black people, for example, a white male that goes into a school and shoots it up. When he goes to court, they push the mental health issue. But if a Black boy was to go into a school and shoot it up, they would not. They would say he's a thug, he's a gangster, he's this, he's that. So for this collection, I drew from our community issues with it, as well as on a broad spectrum. But of course, I wanted to do something for my community to help. So
If you had the attention of the entire world, what would you say?
I would say, I would tell them to of course pay attention to the story that I'm about to illustrate because it's going to be amazing. And of course, I would say the obvious things: peace, love, joy, be kind to each other. But I would definitely say to pay attention to the story I'm going to tell, because I think it will definitely help with how Black people are perceived in the US and around the world. And that's very important to me. And I really want to tell a different story. So, and of course, be nice to each other.
I've never heard that as a response. I think that is literally the ideal, not the ideal. I think that's literally like the idea of this like whole vision and podcast for me. It's listen to the story that I'm about to tell. So listening to the story that you as a Black woman is going to tell, or that person, because it can change the world. I
Yeah.
love that.
Thank you.
That answer is so dope. I've never heard that before. Listen to the story I'm about to tell. Quieisha is that chick. She is that chick. And I just absolutely love her Kelly Rowland story because it's like, Kelly didn't have to do that, but Kelly stepped in and she saw a moment and she ended up helping her embrace her own name. I just love it. I love it. It's like Black women empowering other Black women. It's what it's all about. So if you love this interview, please share it. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you rate, review. That's how we get the word out about the podcast and bring attention to it. Also, go and follow Quieesha. I will have linked in the bio information of where to find her brand. She's amazing. She's amazing. So get on that. Other than that, this is your first time here. As always, go check out other interviews I have. There's many, many, many amazing Black women I've interviewed, and they're all absolutely great. So I hope you're having a great week. I love you and see you next time.